Cindy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it. So on a Saturday morning, it was about 7 a.m., I was sitting in my home office listening to a CD I recorded a few days earlier on strategy, and I was just checking to see if I needed to make any changes. At about 7:30, my then 5-year-old son, Luke, came into the room, and he plopped down on the big brown leather chair. I watched him listen for a minute, and finally I had to ask. I said, "So Luke, what do you think of Dad's new CD on strategy?" I was kind of excited. And he paused for a moment and said, "It sounds like church." So, not making that connection, I said, "Well, church, how is it like church?" He said, "Well, there's a lot of talking. I don't understand most of it, and I think I'm getting sleepy." You got to love the kids because they do keep it real for you. But in fairness to Luke, I think oftentimes when we have conversations around strategy and planning, it can be very theoretical, very textbookish, and not really applicable to what we're doing day in and day out. And the hope, as Cindy expressed today, is that we change that mindset a little bit. There's a simple but often overlooked premise in business, and that is new growth comes from new thinking, right? New growth comes from new thinking. Expecting new growth for your business, for your area, without new ways of thinking about it is like a farmer expecting new crops to grow without first planting the seeds. And so today is really a wonderful opportunity to have that new thinking, to express that new thinking. We did the webinar, as Cindy mentioned, a couple weeks ago, and that gave us the opportunity then to really create today as being a workshop. It's not going to be the talking head Rich in front of the room for 3 hours till you're falling off the chair sleeping. It's going to be very interactive. And again, appreciate your patience with the webinar and then doing those 4 exercises between the webinar and today, so that as we quickly review those, we're going to then give you an opportunity to talk with each other about what you had in those areas. Because the reality is, a plan is only as good as the thinking that goes into it. And again, many of you have worked with other companies at some point in your career, and in some cases, my guess is you've been in an organization where you maybe went through, or the group went through the motions of doing the plan, but then 3 months, 6 months into the year, we're not using it, right? It's either sitting on a shelf or it's buried in a PowerPoint deck, but we're doing our stuff, and the plan is not linked to what we're doing. And so today, as Cindy mentioned, really the end goal is to help you, give you some further ways to think about, talk about your business, the key issues, and then channel those insights and that thinking into a plan that you believe in, that you think can help you grow your business. Doing the exercises, answering the questions, none of that means anything unless it's helping you drive your daily activities. So again, today we have an opportunity to talk with each other about the business this morning. And then as we break into regional teams this afternoon, we have an opportunity to really hone in on what are those 3 to 5 strategies for my area that are really going to grow the business. Because we know 10 years ago, most of you could have the exact same strategy and probably be successful. But the reality today is, in this marketplace, because of differences in reimbursement, access to physicians, consolidation with your customers, changes in healthcare reform, no 2 areas are exactly the same. You all understand that, and the key is, can you tailor your strategies to the nuances of your business? That's where people really start to separate themselves from the pack. Cindy mentioned the importance of strategic thinking, and one of the studies she referred to was a survey with 10,000 senior executives around the world. And in the survey, they were asked, what do you feel is the leadership ability that most contributes to the company's long-term success? And the number one response by 97% of senior executives was the ability to set strategic direction. So as an ABL, you, out of everybody in the organization, have the most impact on the business because you are the closest to the customer. The strategies that you set or don't set are really going to determine the success of the organization long term. The other important thing to consider as an ABL is that research has also shown that team members who have a leader that has good strategic direction, that they really believe has good strategic direction, their commitment level is 40% higher to the team when they believe their leader has good strategic direction. 40% higher. So we always talk about how do we get better buy-in, how do we get better commitment. That really begins with your ability as a leader to set direction and, just as important, communicate that direction. So as we finish this morning, the last couple exercises or tools that we go through will give you a way to very succinctly communicate your strategies to your team so that they're crystal clear on what you're going to do and also crystal clear on the things that really aren't part of the strategy. They're not part of the plan. But the real question is, when you're working with your folks in the field, how are you staying strategic? This framework I've used for the last 12 years or so to help people keep it simple. And so on the webinar, we reviewed these 3 A's: acumen, allocation, and action. And so today, we're going to, again, use this as an umbrella. But one of my hopes is, and Cindy mentioned it in her first point, it's not enough just for you to be a strategic thinker, to be a strategic leader. How do you build those muscles in your people so that they become more strategic and they become as effective as possible? So this framework potentially will help us do that. Acumen, what's your learning? What's your takeaway? What's that insight? Allocation, great strategies is much about what you choose not to do as it is about what you choose to do. And then that third A is action. How do you stay focused on those few priorities that mean the most to your business? When you have a plan, it simply answers 2 questions. What are you trying to achieve? And how are you going to do it? Right? We can make it a lot more complex than that, but that's what it boils down to. Your plan should answer those 2 questions. What are you trying to achieve? And how are you going to do it? Okay? As we talked about in the webinar, that what are your goals and objectives? What are you trying to achieve? And the strategy and tactics are how you're going to get there. So today, as we walk out, we're going to go through some exercises that we went through in the webinar, give you a chance to talk about it, because again, the biggest problem with strategic or business planning as a whole is there's no new thinking that goes into it. You know, we started the webinar with the picture of the Joker and Hannibal Lecter and that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So this morning is really about sharing ideas, sharing insights with each other on your business to stimulate that thinking, to bring up those new ideas, those new insights, the new ways to bring value to your customers. The great contributors, the great leaders record their ideas, they record their thinking, they record their insights. George Lucas was interesting. Before he started Star Wars, he was keeping a log, keeping a journal of his ideas for this movie. And in one of the examples he shared, he was working on the set of a different movie, and he was trying to think about some of the characters for Star Wars. And he had Han Solo, he had Luke, he had Leia, but he was thinking about the robots. but he wasn't locked in on any names. And the person he was working with said to him, George, get me reel 2, dialogue 2, which in the movie business is referred to as R2D2. Reel 2, dialogue 2. And he heard R2D2. And he jotted that down, similar to this page here, in his notebook, and he just kept doing that, and that became his work. I think sometimes we feel as ABLs, potentially, that we've got a lot going on, we've got a lot of meetings and teleconference, a lot of things to do. We don't need to put these ideas down. They're here. They're in our head. We have them. But the reality is, if you're not taking time to record your ideas in some way, shape, or form, they're gone.